Hello, good evening. Welcome families, parents, and caregivers to our event this evening on drug and alcohol use strategies to support healthy youth. I think I've changed the name of this presentation multiple times over the past couple of months. Our partners from Orange County Department of Education have a different title, which is very close. So thank you so much for being here. We really value, we have, I'm going to guesstimate 20 committed parents in the audience that you're here to learn so much valuable information from some real experts in the field, from Orange County Department of Education, our school resource officer, Officer Fred Yeilding, our community partners that are in the back. So we walk hand in hand in this journey of raising healthy youth, and I just appreciate your partnership. My name is Michael Keller. I'm the Director of Social Emotional Support. And I get to lead an incredible team of individuals in Laguna Beach Unified School District, including we have 9 school counselors. We have a coordinator of family engagement, this is Yvonne McGard, who's up in front, does incredible work with our families and partnering with our Family Resource Center and leading so many great initiatives. We have some wonderful partners from Orange County Department of Education who you'll hear from tonight. They serve and support 28 school districts in Orange County, provide expertise in academic support, social emotional support, and lots of different programs and services that are too numerous to name tonight, but really appreciate the expertise of some of our partners tonight. Of course, our partnership with Laguna Beach Unified is, Laguna Beach Police Department is critically important, and Officer Fred Yeilding will be sharing some information with us. I do want to thank all of our partners that were with us tonight for the community resource event, and hopefully you've had an opportunity to collect some really important information from Providence Mission Hospital, our Strength in Numbers group. Marcy Mendick has been an incredible leader within Laguna Beach. She gets a stakeholder group together, and we have a powerful mission around reducing rates of alcohol and drug abuse within Orange County. And Orange County Healthcare Agency also partners with us in that endeavor. Today we have Laura Bushini-Beebe with us, and so thank you so much for all you do directly with our students and the services and programs you provide. California Youth Services is with us tonight. They provide really important support information when students are having difficulties with alcohol or other drugs in terms of intervention programs, providing parent education, and drug and alcohol testing services for us, so they're really helpful to help on the prevention efforts for families. I also want to thank School Power and their work at the Family Resource Center. And they're doing a lot of really great work to bring families along in our journey with youth in terms of providing everything from book clubs to support services, linkages to support services within the community, and ensuring that we all work together on this important mission. We have Twin Town with us tonight. They provide really helpful support and intervention services for youth dealing with alcohol or drug abuse situations, and so thanks to them for being with us. And lastly, I want to thank the Solace Foundation for being with us tonight. We're going to learn a lot about fentanyl and the impact and dangers of opioid addiction and abuse, and the risks around serious injury or death. And we're going to hear some really important information on an opportunity to get some emergency medication to support intervention later tonight. So this is our agenda for the evening. This is my brief introduction, and so I'm going to get off the stage shortly, but I do want to just welcome Corporal Fred Yeilding in a moment to come up and talk about local school district safety practices. And then we're going to be having Stephan Lambert from Orange County Department of Education. He's the coordinator of alcohol and other drug prevention at OCDE. Then we'll have Alva Alvarez, licensed clinical social worker and credentialed staff member, providing some information on us, the links between mental health and substance use among youth and how to support our youth. And then lastly, I mentioned Amy Dunkel from the Solace Foundation, who will be helping us learn more about emergency interventions around opioid abuse and response, and then that Narcan distribution for interested attendees. This is our guiding question. What do we want for our youth? And so I want you to be thinking about that, and you may be a parent or caregiver of somebody that's newborn or somebody that's 30, and everything in between. So I know as a parent of a 15-year-old and a parent of a 12-year-old that I want my children to be confident, to know how to navigate a really complicated world that looks, I think, quite different than when I was a teenager, and be able to have the knowledge and information to be able to make healthy choices in really high-pressure situations. So we're going to be learning a lot tonight about that, and we work every day in concert with you to help make that happen. I do want to share one piece of information, data with you. We survey students every 2 years of the California Healthy Kids Survey. It asks a variety of different questions for students. We traditionally administer it in 7th, 9th, and 11th grades. It's an anonymous and confidential survey, so we don't collect student-specific identifiable information, but we do collect information to help inform our programs and services and the impact that we're having on our youth. One of the questions that is asked is, in the last 30 days, have you used alcohol? And then it might list a variety of different other drugs. Stephan probably has it memorized. It's a very lengthy question, but this is really interesting data that we've observed in the last 3 administrations. So in the blue, that's the 2018 administration, and along the bottom are the grade levels of the respondents. We don't give it to every grade level, we just give it to, right now, 6th, 7th, 9th, and 11th, but I'm just showing the secondary data. In the red is the 2020 data, so this is, we administer it in February of each window. And then the green is the 2022 data, and then the gray is the comparison data for 27,000 other students in Orange County that also take the same survey at the same grade level. Did you notice anything that's happened recently? Yeah, it's substantially dropped. So it's important to not really look, we do, like for 11th grade in particular, in 2020, 36% of students endorsed consuming some level of alcohol or other drugs in the last 30 days. And now in 2022, it's dropped substantially to 12%. Now, there's a variety of different explanations and factors and guesses around that. And many of it's post-pandemic related, probably. I don't know what your theories are. I don't want to be curious to learn more about that. But we're hopeful that these trends continue, but we're also realistic that sometimes students are going to be dealing with lots of different things. And we need to be there to support them when families are in crisis and when students are in crisis. So we're going to learn a lot tonight, and I appreciate you being here. For housekeeping purposes, I do want to just thank Orange County Department of Education. They're going to be providing some real-time interpretation services for us in the back of the house. And so I just wanted to make sure that you're aware of that. And thank you so much. We want to make sure all of our programs and services are available to as many families as we can. So thank you so much for doing that. And without further ado, this is the one big takeaway from today, plus additional resources. I'd like to have you this is an appropriate, our friend Marcy Mednick and the Providence Mission Hospital, Raising Healthy Teens group, has really provided a very informative booklet, and then hopefully there's some more available if you haven't already read this. But there's a middle school version and a high school version available for you, and we want to make sure that you are able to have important information about how to start the conversation around alcohol and drugs, what actions you can take to raise your knowledge and awareness, and how you can bring your child along on that journey. We know that conversation really helps to reduce the rates of use and abuse. So you can grab that on the way out, or just scan the QR code right here with your phone and link you to the raisinghealthyteens.org website. All right, without further ado, I'm going to introduce our partner and friend, Corporal Fred Yeilding for Laguna Beach Police Department. Sir. Very good.
Good evening, everyone. I like to walk around when I talk to my hands a lot. This is kind of what I do when I do presentations like this. So, again, my name is Fred Yeilding. I'm a corporal with the Laguna Beach Police Department. Everybody hear me okay? Maybe I should turn the mic on first. How's that? All right, that's a lot better. It helps that it's on. I'll start from the beginning. So I apologize, I like to walk around a lot when I talk, use my hands, that kind of thing. That's just what I do when I do public presentations. So again, my name is Fred Yeilding. I'm a corporal with the Laguna Beach Police Department, and I'm the school resource officer here at the high school and for the district. Primarily, I'm here at the high school. My partner, Officer Croteam, takes care of the middle school and the elementary schools. But again, we serve all the schools in the district. So just to give you a little background on myself, that is obviously a little bit of an older picture. I have since grown a mustache, and I no longer have to wear the mask on my vest there. Just a little background on myself. I've been in law enforcement for about 7 years now, and I've been a school resource officer for about 3 of those 7. I grew up in San Clemente, so I'm born and raised in Orange County. I have 4 sons, yes, 4. So we have a very busy household, but I can understand as a parent how important it is to be engaged in our kids' lives and understand what they're doing, how they're doing it, because like Dr. Keller said, it's definitely changed since I was a teenager. They're faced with a lot more challenges, and that's based on a variety of things. So I want to give you my perspective from a law enforcement perspective, but also as a father. I know there's a lot of experts here that have more information and knowledge than I do, but I do have a real perspective because of the things that I deal with as an SRO and the firsthand experience I have with the kids dealing with certain situations and things that they're dealing with on a day-to-day basis. So part of my job as an SRO is obviously to build relationships with the kids. And that kind of starts with presenting in health classes and all my different daily activities that I do. So part of my strategy, prevention and safety efforts, kind of starts when they're younger. I'm fortunate enough to be able to get into the health classes and teach them, real life stuff about what current trends are, how to, navigate all of the situations they might find themselves in, and just give them a real scoop on what's out there, what's happening, the dangers of it, because I see it firsthand, and our patrol officers see it firsthand. So it's a great way. It's an interactive conversation that we have too. These kids come up. I mean, I had probably 4 pages of questions that they had before we even got into the health class, just about a wide variety of things. So it's a great way for me to answer those questions and have that real interactive conversation with them, because it really helps open them up, especially when they know it's an anonymous question. They're able to open up to me, and I can answer those questions that they might not have asked beforehand. Because it's often harder to ask when you're right there and asking a question than it is to put on a piece of paper. So it starts there for me. So we go over a wide variety of things. And my goal, like I said, is to educate them. I'm not trying to scare them, but it is a byproduct of what I am telling them, because it is real, and I just want them to know, what to expect and the reality of it. So it starts in our freshman health classes. I was actually able to have the opportunity to teach our staff members a lot of these current trends that we're seeing, signs and symptoms of drug and alcohol abuse, and even what to look at if they're bringing pills into school, or if you see them in their backpack. So I've had the opportunity, because they are on the front lines, they're in the classrooms, they're talking with these kids on a daily basis, so they can see changes in their attitude, in their mood, even in their physical appearance. So I wanted to at least give them as much information as I can, because we have such a great relationship with our staff members in my position, that we can have that communication back and forth to be able to pass that information along. So it's a collaborative effort, and like Dr. Keller was saying, it really takes everybody in this room. It takes a village to try and do our best to raise healthy teens and to have them have the most successful experience in school that they can, and growing up. So my role as an SRO when it comes to discipline is different. So your common law enforcement officer would maybe take a different approach than what I do. I'm really more about education and building trust. So when it comes to student discipline, I'm not throwing the book at them. I'm not trying to hammer them with, if I catch them with a vape or pills, whatever it may be. My role as an SRO is to get them the help they need. And again, that's a collaborative effort with parents, with the school district, offering services and help that they need to deal with whatever issues that they're dealing with. And I can tell you right now, the Laguna Beach Unified School District does an absolutely fantastic job in offering those services, and the wide range of support that they have here is amazing. So I can tell you right now, it's a blessing to have your kid in the Laguna Beach Unified. So I guess I have to click the next slide over. There we go. All right, so as far as what we can do as parents. So gone are the days of picking up the landline and calling over to ask if Johnny can come out and play. Those days you really knew who your kids were hanging out with, and you kind of knew the inner circle of friends. So those days are gone, unfortunately, and now we are dealing with kids that have a vast array of friends from different counties because of cell phones. So I'm really going to harp tonight on being able to monitor and know kind of what your kids are doing through different applications. There's different ways and strategies to really be able to monitor kids. And I know as a parent myself, you want to give your kid freedom. You want them to learn and grow on their own. But in today's world, it is imperative that we know, who our kids are hanging out with, where they're going, who they're talking to, because all the applications on these devices, that's how they are accessing some of these things. So we're talking about Snapchat, Discord, Instagram, even, there's a wide variety of anonymous messaging applications that are out there. That's how they're communicating. That is how they're talking to their friends. That's how they're sending videos. That's how they don't even text anymore, which I don't understand. It's all Instagram DMs and Snapchat and all that. So I just actually had a situation last weekend, and I didn't realize this until last weekend, but there's a thing called a snap map, which basically means they can turn their location on, and your little emoji pops up, and if there's a lot of people in one area, it'll be like a big red dot on the map. So people can literally see where a ton of people are hanging out, and then they'll go to that place because they think there's something happening there. So, like I said, the high rates of the student-student related talk happens on mobile devices. Snapchat, Instagram, all that. So these applications that I have up here are fantastic for being able to monitor your kid's phone and then still having the freedom to be able to talk to their friends. So Bark app is an application that you install on your kid's phone, and it will monitor all their social media accounts. There's flags that you can set up if they're, and obviously kids are pretty smart, so they might know a way to get around some things, but it's a way for you to have some sort of insight into who your kids are talking to, what they're talking about, where they're going, that kind of thing. That's a fantastic application. I think you should look into that to put on your kid's phone. And again, you might get some blowback, but you know what? It's a privilege for them to have a phone anyway. So Life 360 is the same. That application is more about location. It actually can track how fast your child is driving. So if they're going 90 on the freeway, you can send them a phone call and say, hey, you need to slow down. And I'm a big proponent of a gap phone because it's talking text only. So they don't have access to internet and any kind of social media applications, anything like that, which again, you might get blowback, but you know what? I would rather have my kid not really be stoked that they can only talk in text than give them the world, because that's basically what a lot of these kids have. And when I was growing up, my close group of friends is really the only information that they had is what I was getting. Now it's all over the place. So that is the reality of what we're faced with as parents of kids in this day and age. So between those three things, you're going to be able to have a lot more insight into what your kids are doing, who they're exposed to, what they're talking about, that kind of thing. So I'm a big proponent of that because information is power, right? As parents, we want to know what our kids are doing. And there's not going to be a lot of times that they really want to come talk to us about illegal drug use or alcohol use, but it's important to kind of know what your kids are up to. So another good thing is, what kind of does get overlooked sometimes is to monitor and lock up any prescription medication, alcohol, and drugs. And I say this because you want to trust your kid. I want to trust my kid. But we have to trust them enough to, kids are going to make mistakes. They're going to make bad choices. And as a parent, again, you want to trust your kid, but it's better safe than sorry. So I'm, again, a big proponent of making sure that our alcohol is behind a locked cabinet, because honestly, they're going to at some point be curious and probably want to go check it out. Or they might get peer pressure from their friends to grab some alcohol at mom and dad's house. Okay, so I'm a big proponent of that. We do have a lot of drop-off locations. We actually have one at the police department where you can come and drop off any unused medication that you might not want, so it's not just sitting in your house. So anything and everything we can do to try and limit the exposure and availability of these things to our kids, again, I'm a big proponent of. So let's just kind of hop in right into the fentanyl craze. And again, we have some experts here, so I'm not going to go over and over again because they probably have more information than I do. But there is a positive to it because, like Dr. Keller said, it is decreasing because it is a very scary thing, and we try and educate them on the dangers of it. And this stuff can be put into almost anything, and it's very, very cheap to make. It's the amount that has to be put into something is so minuscule. So there's a lot of reasons why this has kind of been taking off. So it is scary, but I think that the word is getting out. And that's why we're seeing a decrease in a lot of these things. But it's still prevalent, and it's still out there. The manufacturing of it has risen, but from what I've seen, the use from our teens has decreased. Not to say that adults aren't still doing it, but the youth are actually kind of getting the picture. But we still do have emergency support. So I, myself, have been trained in the but the administration of Maxilon, which is Narcan. So I actually have some here at the school in my office, and I usually carry it on my person just to be extra safe. So I am trained to administer it, so if something does happen here, God forbid, on campus, I am able to administer it. And it's pretty immediate. They'll snap out of whatever they're in because of how it reverses the effects of opioids. So it is, we don't want to say that it could happen, but we would rather be prepared and be able to do it because we're talking about seconds a lot of times, in some cases, between life and death. And that's just the reality of it. So I am able to administer it, and I have it here on campus. And I believe the district has it on campus, other campuses as well, but I'll let Michael answer that question. Something I did want to bring up, just as like a, hey, remember this kind of thing, is our social hosting ordinance. And basically what that ordinance states is that if it is illegal in the city of Laguna Beach to host a party in which there is underage alcohol consumption. And if you do so, and you host it, and something happens to a party goer, like they're driving home and get in a car accident, you could be held civilly liable for damages and all sorts of other things. So I understand a lot of parents' thought process behind, well, I'd rather them drink here than go to somebody else's house and potentially drive home. But again, I'm going to just give you my real perspective as a parent. I think that's just teaching them that it's okay to be doing this type of thing. So I don't approve of that, but it is also still a municipal code for Laguna Beach, and it can get into some real trouble. So not to put a damper on it, but I appreciate everybody's time here tonight. Again, I'm glad you guys came because it's good to see some engaged parents. If you have any questions, I can go to the last slide. I don't know if I go back. There we go. Please feel free to email me at the district email address. Any kind of questions that come up, I'm more than happy to work with you and help you pass along any other information that I have to you guys. So again, thank you very much, and it's good to see you guys all out here.
All right, good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us. My name is Stephan Lambert, and I work for the Orange County Department of Education, where I serve as the coordinator of prevention education. And tonight, my colleague Alba and I are going to be talking about how to support healthy and resilient youth with a very specific focus on what's going on with fentanyl and fake pills. There's a lot of information out there. There's a lot of things on social media and the news. We really want to try and bring some perspective, some context, and help you understand really what's happening. and what's happening here in Orange County. So we're going to start by describing really what is fentanyl, what is this, how does it work, is it affecting Orange County, and if so, how? Then more importantly, how do we talk to teens about it, and how can we protect our families? And our two goals here are, yes, of course, we want you to understand the issue. We want to give you the knowledge about what's happening. But more importantly, we want you to feel empowered to act, right? Sometimes when we hear about something that's very significant and frankly frightening, like fentanyl, it can become overwhelming, and we really don't know what to do with that. But we're hoping that some of the actions and strategies and resources that we give you tonight, you'll be able to take those home and put them into action. So let's get things started right now with what is fentanyl. So fentanyl is an extremely strong pain reliever that's usually used during surgery and for really severe pain, right? It is 100 times stronger than morphine. So it's very, very concentrated, so it's usually used in very low doses and over a long period of time, right? So it's very strong. And fentanyl is what's called an opioid. So opioids are a specific kind of pain reliever, not like Tylenol or Advil, that block pain by attaching to our nerve cells all throughout our brain and body, blocking the pain signals, and of course releasing some of those feel-good chemicals in the brain. That's unfortunately what leads to that addiction, right? So the two main risks normally when we're talking about opioids are addiction, right? So developing the tolerance, needing to take more to block the pain or to feel the effects, and of course poisoning or overdose, right? So when somebody has too many opioids in their body, the part of the brain that it starts to affect is the part that controls our breathing. So as more and more opioids build up, the brain tells the body, hey, relax the breathing, and unfortunately it can slow down and stop. So that's what's called an overdose or an opioid poisoning. Now, I've described for you how powerful fentanyl is, right, and how concentrated it is, and then some of the risks of opioid use. But now you might be wondering, right, why are so many people suddenly using fentanyl, right? This is a medicine that's been around for a very long time, used in healthcare settings, right? Is everyone just suddenly deciding to use fentanyl? And the answer is actually a little complicated. So what is going on right now is not necessarily that people are buying legitimate medicinal fentanyl and misusing it, but that criminals are now mixing their own fentanyl, called illicit fentanyl, in garages, in labs, in the forest, and mixing that illicit fentanyl into street drugs like cocaine, heroin, methamphetamine, all manner of drugs, and very importantly, on the right-hand side, fake or counterfeit prescription pills. So I'm going to show you a quick video for KCAL 9 about what is going on with counterfeit pills.
There's no way to know. Here at the Orange County Crime Lab, what kind of numbers are we talking about? Scientists have been inundated recently with illegal fentanyl, but visually identifying it is impossible. It used to be that counterfeit pills were pretty obvious to spot, like this one right here with a WB printed on it. This is MDMA or ecstasy. This is no longer the case though. At the lab, they're seeing all these pills come in that look exactly like prescription pills. These ones are laced with illegal fentanyl, but they'll fool you. They have the same look and imprint code as Xanax and Norco. Does this look like a Norco tablet to you?
Yes.
And you're experienced?
I've seen a lot of them. And this looks just like the real ones.
Is there any Norco in that?
No.
So that video is from 2016. So that was a long time ago, and already then the crime lab was saying, we are inundated with fake pills. It's turning up in all of these street drugs and pills. They had no idea what was going to come in the next 6-7 years. So just as an exercise, I'd like you all to just take a guess at which of these two pills being sold as oxycodone, popular pain reliever, which of these two pills do you think is the fake counterfeit fentanyl pill? So who thinks that it's A? Who thinks A is the fake pill? Who thinks B is the fake pill? Who thinks both are fake pills? Okay, we got it. Very good. So this is my favorite kind of quiz because everyone gets 100%. But the answer is they're both fake, right? But it's very hard to tell, as they were describing in the video. The people who are making all of these millions of fake pills stamp the powder to make it look like a real medication. So many people are buying these things online either to save money or out of desperation or because they're young and they're trying to access something, not understanding that they're completely fake and contain fentanyl. These pill presses are very cheap, so it's really easy for these criminals to mix these things up and press them. So the Drug Enforcement Administration back in 2019 said they seized about 2.6 million of these fake pills. So those are the ones that they caught, right? And in 2022, they seized 50.6 million and about 10,000 pounds of powder, right? So clearly, there's a lot going on the supply side, right? But because it's so potent, because it's very concentrated, the idea that we can stop this on the supply side is just not going to happen, right? It has to happen with us as a community. And when the DEA tested these counterfeit pills and looked at how much fentanyl was in them, they found that about 6 out of 10 of them had a typical lethal dose of fentanyl, 2 milligrams. This is actually higher than the last stat, which was 4 out of 10, so I had to update this in December. So more and more of these pills are showing up with very high levels of fentanyl. And it seems odd, right? You would think, why would you possibly kill your customers? Wouldn't they look at all of these deaths and think, wow, we need to slow it down? But clearly, they have a lot of business sense, and they're doing this intentionally. They understand that it's kind of the cost benefit, right? It's just the cost of doing business. So it's really up to us to protect our community. And I want to help you understand, that 6 out of 10. How does that happen? How are so many of these pills so dangerous? And to do that, I'm going to use a metaphor. Some of you have probably seen this. Talking about chocolate chip cookies, right? I'm a big fan. I love cookies. So how do you make chocolate chip cookies? You start with all your ingredients, right? You've got your flour, your chocolate chips, your oil, your eggs for $50 each. And then you mix all that together. You've got your cookie dough, right? You scoop it out one by one, and then you end up with these delicious cookies, right? But when you're scooping out the dough balls, you don't check each one and go, okay, there are 10 chocolate chips in this one, there are 10 in this one, 10 in this one, right? So what happens is you end up with some cookies that have more chips than others. So when they are mixing up these fake pills, that fentanyl is so incredibly potent, right? They only need a little bit of that mixed into this giant bucket of other powder that's basically filler. And then they stamp the pills, so that's what happens. Is many of these pills, they're so unevenly distributed in the fentanyl that one can have very little and the next one can have a fatal dose. And because of that unpredictability, that is what causes so much of what were the emergency situations, these hospitalizations and emergency responses. So to put it in context again, this is a lethal dose of fentanyl on the end of a number 2 pencil, right? So we're talking in very, very minute amounts. So you can imagine a chocolate chip, one chocolate chip being the difference between life and death. And that is what's driving a lot of this danger. It's just you can't predict how much is in each pill, which is why one of the messages that you hear is one pill can kill. These are the 3 categories of prescription drugs that are most commonly misused, right? So of course we've got opioids over there on the left, medicines that are intended to treat symptoms of anxiety in the middle, like Xanax and Valium. And then over on the right hand are the prescription stimulants, typically for treating symptoms of ADHD, right? All 3 of these drug categories, the photos that you see are counterfeit pills. So not only are they making fake opioids, which makes sense because fentanyl is an opioid, but they're also making fake Xanax, fake Valium, fake Adderall, and selling all of those pills. And it seems odd, right? They're putting an opioid into what's supposed to be a stimulant. But because it's just so cheap, addictive, and easy for them to do, it's showing up in absolutely everything. So that was a lot of information. So I'm going to pause here and just quickly review the key kind of takeaways, particularly when you're having conversations with your kids about the topic. Number 1 is that, again, this is illicit fentanyl. This isn't real medication. They're mixing up illicit fentanyl and putting it into street drugs, as well as these fake prescription pills, so they look exactly like real pills. And then the second part there is that they're just really unpredictable, right? So many of them have this very dangerous level of fentanyl, and there's this message that you see all over the place, which is one pill can kill, which, I mean, it sounds scary, but honestly, that's the reality, is because they're so unpredictable, there's no knowing how much fentanyl is in there. So the next part here, I want to talk about Orange County specifically. Is it affecting us here? And I think many of you know the answer is yes, but I want to kind of explore that a bit. So we're going to look at some data. So what do you think? By how much do you think fentanyl deaths have gone up here in Orange County since 2017. So in just the last 4 years, how many times? You think maybe twice as many, 3 times? Go ahead and hold up a guess on your hands. 4 times as many, 3, 5, 5, 3, 3, okay. So it's 12 times. So back in 2017, we only had, I don't want to say only, we had 57 deaths related to fentanyl, and then in 2021, that was up to 717. All right, so that's a substantial increase. It looks like it's sort of leveled off a bit going into 2022, but it hasn't really gone down necessarily. It just had such a steep increase over the last 2 years. So on that note, what age group do you think is being impacted the most with these fentanyl-related deaths? Who thinks teens? Young adults? Middle age? Or seniors? Okay. So it's actually people my age. So adults ages 30 to 39. If you look at the distribution here, it's heavily concentrated in the 30s, and as you might expect in the 20s as well. You see the teens there, but we don't want to discount that because they basically went from 0 all the way up to that in just the span of 2 years. And so it is impacting our young people, but I would urge you all to consider it's not just the teens, it's also adults, it's parents, it's your friends, neighbors, right? Everybody needs to know about counterfeit pills because it's affecting the whole community. So, this is a spoiler from Dr. Keller, but it's all right. So, what percent of 11th graders in Laguna Beach do you think have tried misusing prescription pain medications? Who thinks 0 to 5%? It's like 5 to 15. Anyone over 15%? Oh, okay, all right. So it's 2%. Oh, it's 2%. So this is, the question is, have you ever tried in your lifetime the following substances? He used the past month, I did just have you ever. And so you can see there, it's actually one of the lowest substances of use among the others. Like you can see a big span there all the way down to alcohol, right? But, so I don't make this point here to say that no one is doing it. I make this point to show that it's not, what we're seeing is not the result of necessarily more people taking drugs. It's that the drugs are getting more dangerous, right? The risk of misusing medication has gone up significantly. Not that more people are using it. So when we do presentations like this or I talk to students, I really try to hammer on that point because I don't want young people to think this is all over the news, they're doing presentations about it in class. That must mean that all the people my age are taking pills, right? And maybe that's the social norm and they start to get influenced by it. So that's why I make that point. So how do we talk to teens about it? First of all, I would say using teachable moments. So this workshop that we're in right now is a teachable moment. You get home, say, hey, I just got back from Laguna Beach High School. They were talking about fentanyl. What have you heard about that? Are you learning about that in school? Have you seen people talking about selling pills on Snapchat? The news is another great example. You see articles all the time, Netflix shows now. Or you see a prescription drug ad, right? We were just talking about this, how prescription drugs are advertised all throughout the country. When you see one of these things, right, this is an opportunity to organically have a conversation about this. Because, yeah, it can be a little awkward to bring it up out of nowhere. So when you are in that space and you've started that conversation, asking open-ended questions is a great way to unlock what your child thinks about substance use and medications, getting to hear from them what their beliefs are, their attitudes, what they've heard from their friends. And it's really important to do this as they grow, right? These conversations start when your children are very young and you talk about medication safety and why do we listen to doctors when we take pills. And it slowly gets more complex as they grow older and you're able to monitor, hey, have things shifted? Are they starting to get curious about certain things? Do we need to maybe find a little more information to bring to them? So on that note, share the facts, what you've learned here tonight, and being very clear about expectations, right? If young people believe that their parents disapprove of alcohol and drug use, they're less likely to go on to use those things, right? It makes sense intuitively, and of course, this is a time of independence, rebellion, right? But it's so crucial that they know where you stand on this issue, and that there's not gray area. So I'm just leaving this up here because I mentioned go back to the facts, share what you've heard, share what you know about fentanyl and fake prescription pills. But also I wanted to leave you with a couple more talking points. points to discuss and explore with your kids. So first, always assume that a pill is fake unless it comes from a parent, guardian, or medical professional. Just always assume it's fake. Like they were saying, these are so incredibly cheap to produce compared to growing fields and fields of opium poppies and harvesting it and processing it or trying to divert legitimate medications. It's so cheap to make these fake pills. You just have to assume any pill is fake unless you know where it came from. Second, on that note, is that the people who are making this stuff, this is their driving motive, right? We just talked about how there's more and more pills and they contain more and more fentanyl. The people who are making them clearly do not have the health and safety of their customers in mind, right? It's important for them to see that and to understand that it's really about money and it's not about safety, and so it's up to us to protect ourselves. And on that note, this is a more general thing to bring to your kids, to be wary and skeptical when you're buying things online, right? It's not just pills. You know, sometimes you buy a USB charger off Amazon and then it blows up and starts a fire, right? There's all sorts of fake things being sold, and your kids know it. They hear all the funny stories about like Wish and buying stuff online, and you get it and it's a counterfeit, it's a knockoff. Helping them to extend that understanding of don't get ripped off online into this arena, because a lot of young people say, or a lot of these stories that we hear are young people who have bought these pills on social media platforms from people that it's a friend of a friend, and I just sent them this message and then they delivered it to me. So helping them to see that scams and ripoffs, this is just the latest one, except the stakes are very, very high. And then, of course, coming in on this point again, that most teens are not misusing medication, and there's help for those who want to quit. And we as parents, I know that Adela's going to talk about this later, can help them to develop those coping strategies, right? If they're not feeling well, if they're feeling stressed out, what is something I can do that doesn't involve misusing medication? And on that note, I'm going to pass it over to Adela for our next section.
Good evening, everybody. I am really glad to be able to be here and share with all of you all this wonderful information. It's always a hard act to follow Stephen, right? But I'm hoping that what I can give you is important and relevant, and you feel like it's purposeful for what you're doing with your children. How do we protect our family? I don't want to read this entire slide to you, and in fact, there are only 2 points that I want to make off of this slide. The first one is that the fear used to be of addiction, right? There used to be a fear and anxiety of what if my child becomes addicted? And that's now shifted to a fear of experimentation. What if my child experiments with that one drug that is fake, and then that's it? Okay, so I want to leave you with that point. And then the other point, and a little bit of hope, is that most teens who experiment with drugs, it stays at that level. And they move on, and they don't ever use again. And there are some who experiment and decide, you know what, this isn't for me, and I'd like to reach out for help and support, and we can give you the resources to get your students that help and support that they need for themselves and for your family as well, okay? I see some of you taking pictures of the slides. We should have mentioned at the beginning that you will be getting a copy of this presentation, so you will have access to all of this information as well as we speed right on, okay? So again, just a reminder that, a lot of our kids, and as a clinician, I would see it in my sessions. I would ask about the drug use, and they said, well, my friends are trying it, so I just wanted to try it, and I did it, and that was it. Okay, so there is a little bit of hope in that. I want to mention, you see the chicken and the egg, right? There's a lot of egg talk for how expensive eggs are. Maybe we need to start switching that out. When we talk about the overlap of substance use disorders and mental health, we know that many individuals who do develop substance use disorders are also diagnosed with a mental health disorder and vice versa. Our partners at Twin Towers can tell you that upwards of 20% of students who come in or clients who come in to treat a drug-related disorder also have the qualifications for a mental health diagnosis. And so then we have to figure out how we're going to treat both, right? We also know that drug use often starts in adolescence when the first signs of mental illness can also appear. Additionally, when we talk about the warning signs of drug use and mental illness and adolescence, they often overlap, right? We know that teens can be moody. We know that teens can often want to isolate from their families. We know that teens sometimes are, they just want to be by themselves. And so it's kind of trying to figure out, well, is he just being or he or she being a typical teenager? Are they using drugs? Is there a mental health disorder, right? right? And so we have to learn to kind of differentiate, and as a parent, because you know we need additional hardships in our life, we want to look at the frequency and the duration of the symptoms that are coming up to kind of determine what kind of support that our child needs. And so we know that there are mental health disorders can happen as a result of substance use, and we also know that substance abuse can also be a result of mental health disorders or symptoms. And again, it's that what came first, the chicken or the egg. We want to talk about some risk factors for substance use. What makes some students more susceptible to engaging in substance using behaviors? Peer pressure is a big one, right? And like the officer mentioned earlier, we don't always know who our children's friends are anymore, okay? Back in my day, if someone wanted to talk to me, they had to call my house, and there was a pretty high chance that one of my parents was going to answer the phone, right? And when I had to call my friends, I was like hoping that my parents' friends didn't answer the phone, because that's really embarrassing and awkward when you're a teenager. But now our kids have their phones themselves, and they make friends across social media, and they make friends across video games. And so when they say, oh, my friend so-and-so, you're like, oh, where is that friend from? Oh, Australia. Oh, okay, you know, and we don't know who they are. And so it's really important to be mindful of who our kids are talking to in real time. Lack of supervision is one. Social media use is a huge one, you know. As Stephan mentioned in our officer too, there's different emojis that they're now using on Snapchat and different social media platforms to ask for substance use, to connect with drug dealers who will say, yes, I've got what you need, you know. So there's a whole, there's a sheet online, and I believe we have it here in our resources, that tells you which emojis that they're using to be able to ask for what type of drug is available, okay? It's easily accessible. We just heard fentanyl is really cheap and it's all over the place. Trauma or history of a crisis or tragic event. Existing mental health concerns, like I mentioned in the slide before. Child abuse and neglect goes along with that trauma. Less access or availability to resources, right? We don't want to, pathologize anybody, but if there's not a whole lot of resources available for after-school activities, but drugs are abundant, that may be something if this student is faced with that crisis, or that choice, that's a choice that they might make. Lower failing grades, low attendance, a sense of hopelessness, right? If I don't feel like I have anybody to live for, and drugs kind of give me an opportunity to numb myself, to walk away from it, I might be more susceptible to that. And then drug use and availability of drugs by friends and or family. I have a lot of kids that I used to work with in the juvenile institutions that would tell me, yeah, my family gave me my first drink of alcohol. I was like 2 when they thought it was really cute, okay? So something to be mindful of. Protective factors, so what helps protect our kids? And we know that involved parents and caring adults are a huge protective factor. Research has shown that it only takes one caring adult in a children's life to help them build that resiliency. And I'm so happy to see all of you here today, because already you're demonstrating that you care for and you're invested in your child's life. A strong parent-caregiver bond is also something that helps our students. Healthy self-esteem. They feel good about themselves. They're able to withstand that peer pressure. Just because everyone else is doing it doesn't mean that I have to, because I feel comfortable in who I am. And this is really hard when you're a teenager, right? Because self-esteem and body image and all that is really hard. But if we do whatever we can to build up our students' self-esteem, that's really helpful for them. Safety, protection from harm and fear. They feel like they have a safe physical environment. That's a really huge protective factor. Clear limits and consistent discipline. Okay, and I'm going to talk a little bit about what this looks like in the next couple of slides. Catching them doing good. Oftentimes it's easy, and not because we're doing it intentionally or purposely, but to forget about all the good things our kids are doing, right? But when we get a phone call from the school, we're like, what happened? What did you do, right? Well, what if we caught them doing good? Thank you so much for, loading the dishwasher today. Thank you so much for the way that you helped your brother and sister today. I really appreciate how loving you are, and I'm so proud of you for the straight A's that you're getting, or the grades that you're getting. They don't even have to be straight A's, but catching them doing good so that they don't feel like they're only getting caught and getting talked to when they're in trouble. Positive peer relationships and social connections, and then modeling self-care. What are we doing as parents to model wellness to our children? Okay, and I'll talk about that in the next couple of slides as well. So here are 6 key strategies for supporting our children, okay? 1, find, and let me preface this by saying that many of you may already be doing a lot of these strategies and utilizing some of these strategies, and this is just validating to you, and if you are, great. I'm so excited, and I'm really happy for you. But there might be some things where like, I hadn't heard of that before. Maybe it's something new that I can learn and implement. The first one is find unique and additional ways to engage with your child, right? We are all engaging with our children at any given point in the day when we get home from work, but we also know that there's something to be said about having dinner as a family. 20% of children who said that they had dinner with their family 2 or more nights a week were 60% less likely to have depression or anxiety symptoms, right? So something as easy as having dinner with our children, which isn't always easy because we are also busy, right? But maybe another unique additional opportunity is maybe I'm going to offer to drive the carpool after softball today. Okay? Because guess what? Carpool is a magical time when you get to hear everything that's going on, even the stuff you didn't think you wanted to know, right? But you get to know who your children's friends are as well, and you hear them talking. And as they're talking to their friends, maybe later you can, tell them, hey, you know what? Tell me more about this. I heard you guys talking. What was that about? And you're engaging with your children in that time. Find one-on-one opportunities if you have multiple children to dedicate to each child so that you're having that bonding moment, right, and fostering that relationship. And if you are doing this, then it gives you an opportunity to watch and notice any dramatic changes in their behaviors and their attitude, which can be a warning sign for a substance use issue. The second one is model responsible attitudes and behaviors around wellness, okay? I have to specify and I have to share that during the first few months of the pandemic, alcohol sales went up 20% in the US, okay? And so I wonder what we were modeling to our children by engaging in these habits, right? What would be the difference is if after a long, stressful day, you told your child, I'm gonna go for a run, would you like to go with me? Versus I'm gonna open that bottle of wine and I'm just gonna drink it and I'm just gonna veg out on the couch. And this is not to judge anybody, but again, we wanna make sure that we're modeling appropriate self-care behaviors for our children. Okay, we want to practice self-care. And, these are some things that wellness activities for parents. I know sometimes it's really hard. It's like, you don't understand. I have work, and then I got to come home and I got to make dinner, and then I got to make sure everyone's got homework done, and then I got to make sure everyone's got their nighttime routine and is in bed. And by the time everyone's in bed, I'm exhausted and I'm ready for bed, right? But it's really, it can be as easy as just scheduling and setting an alarm on your phone for yourself to remind yourself, I need to get up and walk around, okay? We want to make sure that we're taking care of our physical health. We are journaling if we need to, self-monitoring, dealing with emotions, okay? We want to let our children know that it's okay to experience emotions. If our children see us cry, it's okay. Because it lets them know it's okay if I cry. It's okay if I'm not feeling okay. We don't want to save them from the emotions, right? It's really hard as a parent because when your child is dealing with something really hard, you just want to fix everything for them. But if we don't teach them how to get through them, they won't ever know how. And it'll be harder and harder for them to manage those emotions as they go on in life. We want to model what it's like to ask for and accept help from others, right? We're so independent. I don't want to ask for help because I don't want to be a bother to anybody. But what is that teaching our children? And then caring for our own mental health. What are we doing for caring for our own mental health? And practicing our own relaxation skills, right? It doesn't mean that you have to go for a jog, especially in Laguna Hills, because you guys have a lot of Laguna Beach. You guys have a lot of hills, so just even walking on campus. But maybe it means that you're watching a favorite TV show for a couple of minutes while you're done. You're journaling, you're reading a book, whatever works for you. Get to know your child's friends and talk about peer pressure and friendship. Again, this is, we have to find unique and creative ways to know this. When your child tells you, my friend so-and-so, tell me about this friend. Where are they from? Where do you know them from? Right? Because it gives you an opportunity, and then you might start noticing patterns if they start mentioning one specific friend over and over again. Tell me more about this. Why don't you invite them over to the house, right? And they might tell you, oh, they can't because they live in Australia. Okay, well, that's what kind of friendship is this, right? But if you have friends at school, let's do something together. What would you like to do? And again, to get to know them and let them know that, no matter what their friends are doing, that if they are having a hard time if they're at a party and they're having a hard time, they can text you a code word, hey, I need to be rescued, okay? The other thing with this is, if your child is expressing to you that they have a friend who's dealing with substance use issue, they're trying to gauge your reaction, okay? Because if you respond in a very judgmental and a harsh way, then if they're dealing with something, they might be less likely to come to you with that information because they're gonna say, oh my gosh, look at how my parents reacted. I don't feel safe telling them this, okay? But ask them open-ended questions and let them know if you're ever in trouble, give me a call and I will come pick you up. This is your safe word. You can tell them, you can tell your friends after this party, I'm going to drug test you. And that might be your way out of them peer pressuring you because now they know that this is happening at home. And then we want to establish clear rules and fair consequences, okay? Often we become very reactive instead of proactive. So our kids don't necessarily know they're breaking any rules if we don't have rules established or if we don't have boundaries established. And it's really great, they're more likely to follow this if they have buy-in, right? So as soon as they're, as soon as they're able to have these conversations, well, these are some of the rules, what do you think about this? What do you think a consequence should be? And again, if they know what the rule is and they know the consequence, they're more than likely to follow the rule than not at that point. You have to know the who, what, when, where when your child goes out. My own daughter, 13 years old, she hates that. Hi, Mom, how come I get? And I'm like, you're not a normal kid, sorry, kiddo, right? I need to know who they are, the parents, where you're going, and just like those devices that the officer was mentioning on the phone, she's got all of them, so I know where she's at any given time. My poor kid. And then we want to help your child brainstorm positive and healthy ways to form friendships, relieve stress, and take risks, right? If you're feeling stressed out, my daughter of a therapist, she'll come home sometimes and tell me my social battery is drained. I just need to lay down. By all means, go lay down, okay? But again, letting her know that it's okay to tell me, I'm really exhausted and I need a break, Mom. Okay, we'll do what you need to do, right? Our kids are very active in a lot of different activities, and sometimes they just feel overwhelmed, and it's okay to let them know if you don't do this today, it's okay. Give yourself a break, because we don't want to burn them out either. And so we want to talk about the reasons why they use sometimes, right? They want to connect with others. It seems like something people my age do, people I look up to do it, right? They also sometimes do it because they feel bad and they want to feel better, and they're curious and they want to try something new. Again, most of the kids who experiment do it because they're genuinely curious, right? And it's the one and done sometimes, but we need to make sure that we're having these conversations with them early and upfront and early on. And so here are some resources. Stay informed and connected to what resources are available in your community. SAMHSA is a great website, gives you all kinds of information about substance use, different kinds of substances, how to talk to your children, okay? And so I just want you to take a minute to reflect to yourself, to think about what are some strategies you're already practicing to support your youth and your students at home. And also, in what I shared, can you identify one new strategy that you can start practicing or in any of the other areas mentioned? And it doesn't have to be big. It just be one small thing that you can start to consciously implement in your conversations with your children to be able to continue supporting them. And therapy is most effective when parents are involved in treatment planning and follow-up care and decisions for the adolescent. So if your child is seeking services, it's really important as a parent to be involved. Please know that a therapist isn't going to tell you everything that happened in a session because there is confidentiality, right? But you can ask, how can I support my student at home? What did you work on in therapy that I can continue working with them at home? Maybe like a coping skill, and reminding your child, what are some coping skills you learned? If you're having a hard time right now, what did your therapist teach you? How can we help you practice that in the home as well? Here are some local resources, and like I said, you're going to be getting this presentation, so you'll be able to access this and click on the links here. We have for the helpline directory for counseling and outpatient treatment, and additional online resources that you can access when needed. And I believe I'm going to turn it over to Stephan now. Thank you so much.
Whirlwind. Yes, you're going to get all these slides, and you probably saw some of those agencies are the ones who are here who have the resource tables as well. So before we move on to our final segment for our naloxone training, just wanted to quickly recap. So today we discussed what is fentanyl, this extremely powerful opioid, and this illicit version is being mixed into street drugs and fake prescription pills. It is affecting Orange County, it's affecting our youth, but adults as well, and so we all need to be aware of the issue. How do I talk to teens about it? Making sure that they understand only taking medications that come from you or from a doctor, to be wary when they're online, and to, of course, to protect your family by starting these conversations with them and implementing those self-care strategies, setting those boundaries, doing that modeling. It's so important to pull all those pieces together and really make a dent in this issue. There are some additional resources. Again, you'll get these slides and you'll be able to click on these things and access them. Just additional information about some of the strategies we discussed, as well as more specific things on heroin and fentanyl, particularly if you know a young person who's already struggling. What are the questions to ask when you're looking for a treatment center? What does that process look like? How does insurance work? That middle ebook there is a great place to start. These are also available in Spanish, so both of those versions will be clickable in the slides. We do have a survey, so Alba was kind enough to put together our QR code. So if you're able to take your phone out and to scan that with your camera, we appreciate any feedback you have about our presentation here tonight, ways that we can improve it, content that you'd like to see added or subtracted if I talk too long. So we welcome that, so please, if you have a chance, fill out that survey. If you want to just scan it now, you can take it later as well. But with that, our next segment will be Amy. So Amy Dunkel is the Executive Director of Solace Foundation. She's a founder as well, and she's going to tell her story and train you all on how to administer naloxone, which will be followed by the distribution. So without further ado, Amy Dunkel.
So hi everybody, I'm thrilled to be here tonight. I'm going to go through this quite fast because you guys want to get home. I established the Solace Foundation in 2015. It's just me with a little help from my husband. We've distributed 46,000 doses of naloxone. We've recorded over 2,500 reversals, and it was the first naloxone distribution program in Orange County. And my why is my Ben. So I lost Ben in 2012. You know, it wasn't so long ago that I sat where you're sitting. And my biggest concern was when my kids got behind the wheel of a car, or whether they got, if they got sick. It never entered my head that I would lose a child to an overdose. Ben died in 2012. He was with 3 people who he went to high school with, and they were 3 minutes from the fire station, and they panicked, and they didn't do what I would have loved they had done and helped him. So I do what I do because of him. He was a gentle, tender soul. He felt everything in life incredibly deeply, and he started to use substances because he felt everything so deeply. So this is for Ben. The reason I can train you, the reason I can distribute naloxone here tonight is Assembly Bill 635, the Overdose Treatment Act, and it protects you both civilly and criminally from practicing medicine without a license. If you think somebody's overdosing and you administer naloxone, Narcan, you are entirely covered. So, all you have to do is think. If you think somebody's overdosing and an opiate is involved, then please use the Narcan. Naloxone Narcan is the same drug. It's an opiate antagonist. It works only to reverse an opioid. It serves no other purpose. So if you were to give it to somebody who had no opiates in their system, it would do nothing to them. It works for about 20 to 90 minutes, and it will put somebody who's physically dependent on opioids into withdrawals, which are very unpleasant. And as I said, if there is no opioid present, it will do nothing. We have opioid receptors throughout our body. Too many opioids and too many receptors simply shuts down the breathing part of the brain. When we administer Narcan, naloxone, it goes into the body, goes to those receptors, it knocks the opiates off the receptors, and it binds to those receptors for approximately 30 minutes, hopefully getting the person to breathe again and protecting them from any opioids within their body. So while the Narcan is on the receptors, the hope is that the opioids will dissipate. They won't completely disappear, but they'll be reduced to the degree that when the Narcan slips off the receptors, the opioids reattach, they will be fine. And in most cases, that is the case. What puts people at risk of an overdose? Mixing drugs, any mixture. Variation in strength and purity. We're in the midst of a fentanyl epidemic, so it's a great concern. Tolerance changes, so we're talking about people who struggle with a substance use disorder. They go into treatment, they go to the hospital, whatever. Their tolerance is reduced and it makes them more likely to overdose. New experimental drug users. So, this is the period in time where we have the most toxic drug supply in history. So our youth are at risk just through experimenting. And using alone is a great risk factor. Signs and symptoms of an overdose. We're looking for a change in responsiveness. We're looking for a change in breathing. They can be breathing, but there could be long gaps between the breaths, or they can stop breathing entirely, and the color can change very quickly to blue or ashen color. The one thing as parents I want to alert you to, it's really important, is the snoring and gurgling. I can't tell you how many parents I've met who heard the noise as their children were in their last moments of life. and it's this gurgling, snoring sound, and I've heard it told so many times. So be aware. But you're really looking for a change in responsiveness. Children, if they're going to try a substance, they're not going to do it in front of you. They're going to do it behind closed doors. So what we want to do is determine if somebody is unresponsive. You know, we shake, we shout. If we're not sure, we inflict pain in a humane fashion, using the sternum rub. Rubbing the sternum to see if there's any response. If there's no response, no matter what, it's a medical emergency. And we call 911. You know, it's really important. When I'm in a group of people, I ask one person to call 911 for me. If I'm alone, I'll put it on speakerphone because I want to be able to speak to an operator. Using naloxone, so we're using nasal Narcan, and that's the most common form now. On every box in the back of the room that we're going to give you is a QR code. You can now become educators. You can teach the people near and dear to you. If you have friends, if you have neighbors who have somebody who is at risk, or if you just wanted to spread the word, you can teach them. Just to scan this code will take you to my training. You've determined that somebody is unresponsive. You've ensured somebody's called 911. You're assuming it's an opioid overdose. You want them either on their back or their head tilted backwards. Each box comes with 2 doses. They're contained in containers like this. You take it out of the container and you hold it like this. You don't want to press the nozzle until the depressor until it's actually in the nostril. So you take it out, you tilt the head back, you insert it into the nostril, and you spray when it's in the nostril. The naloxone will come out, it'll go to the receptors, and it'll knock the opiates off the receptors. Even if they're not breathing, this will work. In order to do this, though, you have to have a heartbeat. So chest compressions if there's no heartbeat, but if they're not breathing, it will go to the receptors. In between doses, you wait 2 minutes between doses, either rescue breathing or chest compressions. If 2 minutes are up and they're still not breathing, you take the second dose out. You insert it into the opposite nostril. So we alternate nostrils. So it goes into the nostril and again you spray. We attempt to wait 2 minutes. It's very, very scary. If you administer Narcan in under 2 minutes, it's not going to do any harm, but the more Narcan, naloxone you give, the worse the withdrawal. So we try and wait 2 minutes. Back-to-back doses will not make it work any faster. In between rescue breathing or chest compressions. And we stay with an individual. Once you've administered Narcan, if it is an opioid overdose, it will take the opiates off the receptors, and we have to be mindful of the fact that 30 minutes later, the Narcan will slip off, the opiates will reattach, and there's this potential that the individual could go out again, depending on how much opioid is in the system. Rescue breathing, please get trained. Rescue breathing, CPR. I was able to save our neighbor's life. He had a heart condition, and he passed out in his driveway, and I gave CPR till paramedics arrived. So I'm not going to train you, I can't train you how to do this, but, you know, all adults should know how to, and really, ideally, you know, kids should know before they go off to college. Once you've administered Narcan, if the person is feeling sick, unwell, we put them in the recovery position. So on their side with their knee up, so they can't roll onto their stomach, or on their back. The danger would be that they could throw up and aspirate. So the recovery position is good to know in any medical emergency. Carrying and storing naloxone, it must be kept at pretty much room temperature. We do not put it in a refrigerator or freezer or in a hot vehicle, and we want people to know where it is. I carry it with me at all times. What we don't want is it to be in the medicine cabinet of every single home in Orange County and never see the light of day. Carry it with you. Carry it with you when you travel. I've saved 2 lives with it, and it's an incredible experience. Aftercare. Once you've administered the Narcan, you stay with the person at all times. If they don't respond after 2 minutes, you might need to give them a second dose, potentially a third dose. You alternate nostrils with each dosage. In between times, you do rescue breathing or chest compressions. And if you don't have Narcan, know you can keep somebody alive just by breathing for them. They're dying because they're not getting the oxygen they need. When they wake up, obviously explain to them what's happened. And you do it in a non-judgmental, compassionate way. We want to keep those lines of communication open with our children. They need us, and we need them. One of the side effects of naloxone is withdrawal symptoms. They're temporary, and they only occur if somebody is physically dependent on opioids. And there's always that danger when the naloxone slips off, the opioids could reattach and they could go out again. Contact me anytime if you have any questions. Again, my details on the back of every box. We're going to hand them out in the back of the room. And for Ben, you know, we shouldn't lose anybody to an opioid overdose. It's entirely preventable, a death to an opioid overdose. So please spread the word. Please take a box of Narcan, and please tell others to do this. Every kid should really be going off to college with a box of naloxone. That's how serious the situation we're in at this present time. And that's it. Thank you so much. And please get some Narcan.
On that note, that concludes our presentation for this evening. We do want to, I think that we have a little bit of time to open up for a few questions, and in a brief moment, we'll have Amy go back to the back of the room, and you're able to now pick up a dosage of Narcan if you're interested. Are there any questions for any of our panelists, any of our experts that spoke tonight? School Resource Officer, Yeilding. Yes.
When you talk about kids taking drugs online, is that just from other friends online on social media, or can you go to websites and order drugs online?
Of course, our SRO can provide an answer on this, but yeah, a lot of it is just person to person on social media. They have their plug, their dealer, and they'll message that person, and that's how they'll obtain it. There are, for like the older populations, there are like fake online pharmacies as well that are selling these fake pills, and people who are having difficulty affording their medications are going online to these websites and buying it.
And kids are not doing any motivation doing that as well?
I would say it's predominantly through social media, but I'll leave it to our SRO.
Jerry, you're okay without the microphone? Okay, yeah, predominantly it is through social media. There is something called the dark web. I'm not sure if everybody's heard about it. To get on that is very difficult. So it's a lot easier. It's a lot easier for the kids to just get in touch with so and so who knows so and so who knows so and so. That's predominantly how they're getting it, and that's why we've all kind of touched upon it. The oversight over their phones is pretty imperative. And like she said, they're using different emojis to try and trick us. But there are ways around that. There are websites that actually have a list of those emojis. I had a little card, I'm not sure where I got it from, that had a list of emojis too. So as a parent, you can kind of know what they're talking about. But again, everything is through this. So all of these things are being bought, sold, distributed through social media apps, Snapchat, WhatsApp, Discord, all those types of anonymous messaging applications. Yeah.
Thank you. Yes.
So we told our kids don't, any pills or anything, right? And then someone will need an Advil or something like that. Like, are you seeing this with any like Advil, Fentanyl, anything like that, or is it all the fake prescription?
So from my experience, it's typically just the fake prescription pills. They're not. There's really no reason for them to be putting this stuff in an Advil pill. The only reason that would ever be out there would just because they're trying to hide it from the parents. But typically, it's all fake prescription pills, Xanax, oxycodone, all the things that we saw.
And I think that generally the rule applies that Stephen shared, just that we only get medication from trusted parents or trust pharmacies or trusted retailers.
Yeah, I don't. Obviously, we don't want like incite paranoia. So
Right.
if you're at your friend's house and they're like, "Hey, man, I got a headache," go into your parents' medicine cabinet and grab Advil. The likelihood that is laced with fentanyl is so low. But yeah, that's a good question. But no, we're not. We're just seeing it in the prescription pills because this is coming from drug dealers. So they want to advertise it as best they can, and they're not going to advertise their pills and Advil pills.
Thank you.
Is it prescription only or things like MDMA, Molly, and other like pill street drugs?
That as well.
Yeah, as well,
Yeah.
okay.
Everything. And like he touched upon, it's so easy to make, it's so cheap to make, and it's so potent in such small doses. That's why it's so prevalent now. And it's the cookie thing was just a great example of why 6 out of 10 of these pills are fatal pills because of that analogy. So, but yeah, it's being put in everything. Marijuana vapes.
How about babies? Is it vapes?
Not a lot, but it can be. But it can be. I'm not seeing a lot of it. Mostly what I'm seeing on the streets when we're pulling out of cars and stuff is the fake pills. I haven't seen a lot of it in vapes itself or marijuana, but it is out there because we have seen it very seldomly, but it doesn't mean that it's not out there.
Yeah, I would say like the likelihood is that they're going to encounter the fake prescription pills. That would be the number one thing. But there were some high-profile cases like we heard about in Buffalo where people were, where there was cocaine that contained fentanyl. So definitely the street drugs are more common in like the young adults and older, but the fake pills especially are just rampant because they don't have a lot of stigma compared to some of the street drugs. And so it's kind of easier for young people to see like, well, I'm just going to take this thing. There's no needles, there's no powders, I'm not smoking anything. So it sort of has this perception of safety around it. And it's kind of normalized, like in our culture, around pills and things. So that's the most likely. But of course, other substance use, we know these behaviors are linked. So if a young person is starting to vape or drink or use marijuana, it's possible that they'll become in contact with some of these fake pills and things like that, just by nature of the people that they're hanging out with and that sort of thing. So I don't want to say like there's no chance that can happen because it's sort of interesting.
Thank you. Oh, yes, one more question, and then if you have any further questions, we would like what I meant to give out earlier, and there's 3x5 cards in the back, but I'm happy to have you write down a question, and we can create a frequently asked questions and submit it back with the slide deck that we get. So please ask your question. Thank you.
So I know there's some people that use fentanyl on purpose, if that's their drug that they want to use. Are they specifically buying it on the pill, or are they buying it in like a liquid or powder form and then putting it on pills? I'm more afraid of like, if my kid goes to someone's house who has like an older brother or sister that is doing fentanyl, that's what they want, maybe they accidentally get it.
That's a complex question.
Is your question, is there incidental contact? Is there a legitimate pill and someone's adding it to a legitimate pill?
Yeah, or we saw in the news there was like candy, like candy pills.
So let me look at, I did skip it for time, let's clarify the whole rainbow fentanyl thing. So there were, I think it was like December or October or something, there was a big, there were many people talking about rainbow fentanyl and that, it looks like candy. So yes, there was this trend that sort of came out of nowhere where some of the dealers were making this multicolored fentanyl called rainbow fentanyl, and the fear was that this was going to like appeal to young people or be like given to people sort of unsuspecting, right? That didn't really pan out. I think it did get people's attention, which was good, but it also sort of took our eye off of the true nature of this issue, which is that it's not being like, it is deceptive, but we don't need to be worried about like 6-year-olds and 7-year-olds coming in contact with this stuff, like trick-or-treating and things like that. Of course they're trying to appeal to young people, but I think it took people's focus off of the real nature of it, which is if you're trying to buy pills, they're going to be fake and they contain fentanyl. But we shouldn't, it spurred a lot of conversation, which was good, but unfortunately it did spur a little too much fear on that side of things. So we wanted to try to rein it in and give a little more context around it. How fentanyl used to be misused was that they would get like extended release things like the patches and the lollipops and things like that and try and misuse those. To an extent that's continued, but yeah, some people will seek out whether it's powder or the pills themselves. Again, like when we talk about the youth though, I think the concern is just laying all these prevention strategies in place so that we have the communication, the monitoring, we have the coping mechanisms so that they don't even get to that experimentation phase, because that is now so much more dangerous than it used to be. Like Adava was saying, we used to be worried about starting to use, becoming addicted, moving on to high-risk use, then overdose and poisoning, and now it's just straight to overdose and poisoning. And so just making sure all those things are in place the best that we can, right? Because we can't control everything about our kids' lives.
I mean, I think, was part of your question, like, do people have, like, legitimate, just straight fentanyl?
Yeah, I think that was permanent.
Yeah, so as far as my experiences, to obtain, like, pure fentanyl is pretty difficult. So these people that are, medicinal use is going to be distributed by, you know, the hospital and, like, all that stuff. They're not just going to, even if illegally, you're not going to just go out and buy, like, a kilo of pure fentanyl. It's pretty much just being put into pills. So to go to somebody's house and think that they have just a little, you know, 8-ball of fentanyl that they're going to then sprinkle over their marijuana, that's highly unlikely.
I can just add on that if you're worried about if you're worried about someone prescribing fentanyl, it more likely is going to be in like a patch form. So you won't really see a pill form being prescribed to like a cancer patient or something.
Yeah, they're not gonna give them, like, you know, either in a pill form, because it's so potent, or a capsule. It's so potent, like he showed on the slide, that little teeny bit of pure fentanyl will take you out. They're not going to prescribe somebody a powder form of fentanyl. It's going to be in a patch or something like that. That's coming from the drug dealers. Yeah.
Can I ask a very quick question? Just very
Yes.
precise.
Very quick question. Yes.
I've heard of test patches for fentanyl, like test strips,
Yes.
for people, for instance, that use cocaine or other things as like a harm reduction strategy. Is that something that's like available to the public or that people can access if they know someone who's using drugs and they want them to use safely or something along those lines?
Not to my knowledge.
You can buy them on Dance Safe, the Dance Safe website.
What's it called?
Dance Safe.
Dan Safe?
Dancing Safe.
Dancing Safe.
Yeah,
Okay.
Dance Safe.
Interesting. Okay, thank you.
It's like a harm reduction coalition for like nightclubs and raves and things like that. That's where
Because there are some people who just
Yeah,
use drugs.
I think now they're legal in California. There are some nonprofits who are distributing them as harm reduction efforts.
Okay.
I think the one word of caution around test strips is that pills in particular, like we talked about, it's unevenly distributed.
Like
so
the
it's not
cookie.
fail-safe.
Yeah.
Right. So sometimes like you got like Crush and things like that, and then if you buy like 5 of them, then I mean it
That
just
makes
tells you
sense.
that it's there, you don't know how much.
Yeah.
So there's no like easy answer. I would never recommend against anything.
But it's not safe.
But well, it's there's always calculated risks.
Yeah.
There's pros and cons.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for being here tonight. We do have a lot of great resources. Obviously, the Narcan's going to be made available in the back of the room from Amy. Thank you so much for making that available to all of us tonight. And we do have, I just want to mention, we do have stock Narcan in all of our school sites in the district office. We have trained teams of individuals in the office. It's beyond Officer Fred and our police responders. So we do have a ever-expanding team, and your training and stocking and care in this effort can also help in an emergency situation. So we really appreciate it. We will be getting this information back out to attendees, hopefully in this week's Principal Weekly Message. And if you ever have any questions about any resources, you can obviously contact me, Michael Keller. I'm the Director of Social Emotional Support. Ms. Yvonne Redard. She's also available as a family resource and supports all of our school sites, so please don't hesitate to reach out. And thank you again for attending, and I hope you have a lovely evening.